am Elena Morgan. I'm 32 years old, and this morning my phone lit up with 15 missed calls. 3 weeks of silence shattered instantly. I stared at the screen, Heather's last words echoing in my mind. Why don't you just disappear? You ruined our lives. My parents had stood behind her, nodding in agreement. So I disappeared. Now, staring at those 15 calls, my hands won't stop shaking. If you're watching, leave a comment telling me where you're from, hit subscribe, and stay with me while I explain how stepping away from family can sometimes be the first step to healing. Growing up in suburban Boston with Diana and Frank Watson looked perfect on the outside. Our two-story colonial with its neat yard and white picket fence could have been in a magazine. Dad worked as an accountant. Mom ran a small bakery downtown. Life seemed normal, or at least that's what anyone visiting would have thought. 6 years separated me from Heather, and it shaped our relationship from the start. From the earliest memories I can recall, I was responsible. By age 10, I packed her kindergarten lunch, checked her homework, and made sure her stuffed rabbit was at her bedside. I didn't think of it as a burden. I loved her blonde curls, her laughter that could light up a room, and the way she clutched my hand when she was scared. Being needed felt special. My parents worked long hours, leaving me to step naturally into the caretaker role. I didn't mind. At least I didn't think I minded. Over time, however, I started noticing how different expectations were for us. My report cards had to be flawless. A B+? Not acceptable. Second place in the science fair? Not enough. Meanwhile, Heather could bring home Cs and Mom would clap for her just for trying. She was the baby, the precious one. I was the strong one, the one who handled pressure. Small things began adding up when Heather was 8. Toys would vanish only to reappear in my room. Cookies from Mom's bakery samples disappeared, crumbs leading back to me. It was easy to dismiss, but patterns emerged. The first big incident happened when I was 14. Heather, 8, knocked over Mom's favorite crystal vase while reaching for a high shelf. I tried to intervene, but she cried out, pointing at me. Cassie told me to climb. She said she was too scared. My parents' disappointment cut deeper than any punishment. I tried explaining, but my words didn't matter. Why would you encourage dangerous behavior, Cassandra? You know better. You're the older sister. That night, I learned my truth didn't hold weight if it threatened Heather's comfort. She had discovered that blame could always shift. High school passed in a blur of achievement. I kept a 4.0 GPA, juggled debate team yearbook responsibilities and a weekend library job. Each minute was scheduled. Every success was noted. Meanwhile, Heather rebelled early, sneaking out, experimenting with cigarettes and alcohol, skipping classes. Parents wrung their hands but rarely enforced consequences. And when she was caught, somehow it was my fault. You were supposed to watch her, Cassandra. You make everything look easy. It makes her feel inadequate. The message was clear. Her behavior was my responsibility. During my senior year, my dream came true. I received a full scholarship to Stanford University for computer science. I danced around my bedroom when the acceptance letter arrived, rain streaking the window behind me. That evening, Mom cried at dinner. Who will help with Heather? California is so far away. Dad stayed silent, disappointment on his face. 2 weeks later, I declined Stanford for Boston University's partial scholarship. Practical, I told myself, save money, stay close to family, keep life manageable. College was a balancing act. Classes, part-time jobs, scholarships, and the chaos of Heather's life filled every day. She barely graduated high school and dropped out of community college after 1 semester. My parents barely reacted. She's finding herself, they said. I graduated summa cum laude in computer science, landed a tech job downtown, and rented a small apartment 15 minutes away. Independence came with the caveat, always be on call. They always needed me. 5 years passed. I moved from entry-level coder to department leader, doubling my salary. Each promotion brought flowers, dinners, congratulations, but also growing tension at family dinners. On the first Sunday dinner in my new car, a modest Honda, Dad sneered. Must be nice to throw money around. Mom shifted the topic to my love life, implying that career success alone wasn't enough. Heather flitted from job to job until she met Jeremy, 6 feet 2 inches, charming but unreliable. Their crises, unpaid rent, electricity shutoffs, broken down truck, became my responsibility. The breaking point came with their 12-year-old car. I bought them a reliable Toyota. Nothing flashy, just dependable. I expected gratitude. Instead, Mom cried, Dad looked embarrassed, and Heather seethed. She called me that evening. Just showing off now? You always need to be the hero, don't you, Cassie? I explained it was about their safety, not impressing anyone. She had already framed the narrative. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My boss told me to take the day. I alternated between planning and grief. By evening, I had decisions. Stop all financial help, seek therapy, and cut contact temporarily. I sent one text. I need space to process. Please don't contact me. I'll reach out when ready. Then I blocked their numbers along with Heather's and Jeremy's. Liberating and terrifying. Amanda came over with comfort food, listening as I recounted everything. Her shock turned to outrage. Cassie, this isn't just wrong. It's gaslighting. I never realized it was a pattern, I admitted. All my life I've been trapped in it. That's because you love them, Amanda said gently. You want to believe the best. That's human, not a flaw. The days following set a new routine. Journaling, work, evening calls with Amanda, researching therapists for family trauma. 1 week later, I attended my first session with Dr. Marlene Foster, a kind but direct woman in her 50s. Her office was cozy, with soft lighting and books lining the shelves. I sank into the chair, clutching my journal, trying to make sense of my emotions. You've been the family scapegoat and savior most of your life, she said. Impossible to sustain. I never thought of it that way, I admitted. I was just doing what any good daughter and sister would do. Therapy became my anchor. I began recognizing the patterns that had controlled my life. Heather's crises coinciding with my achievements, parents expecting me to solve problems, my value tied to what I could provide, not who I was. It was painful to see it so clearly, but there was relief and clarity. 3 weeks passed without contact. Those days became a mix of self-discovery, painful realizations, and gradual healing. I removed my parents from emergency contacts, changed passwords, and looked into condos further away. I started reconnecting with myself. Book clubs, painting classes, dinners with colleagues. My apartment transformed into a sanctuary. Childhood memorabilia pared down, walls adorned with art I loved. Amanda noticed the change immediately. You seem lighter, like you've set down a weight. I think I have, I said, smiling genuinely. The doubt and grief are still there, but they're smaller. Planning my postponed trip to Japan became a symbol of transformation. Nights were spent researching ryokan stays, hidden neighborhoods, and local customs. I joined online language groups, learning basic phrases and etiquette. Anticipating this dream helped me push through moments of doubt. Volunteering also became a crucial part of my healing. I signed up to help at a coding workshop for underprivileged girls. 12 brilliant but hesitant girls, aged 13 to 16, awaited guidance. Watching a determined 14-year-old debug her first program and light up with pride hit me differently than any family praise ever had. My efforts mattered purely for impact, not for appeasing or rescuing anyone. This is what healthy giving feels like, I realized. Offering my skills and support without feeling drained. Watching others grow without resentment. Contributing without expecting thanks or repayment. I became a regular volunteer, eventually helping coordinate the program and even securing extra funding through professional contacts. It fulfilled something family obligation never had. A connection built on respect, not guilt or manipulation. New friendships grew during this time, not just with Amanda, but also with colleagues who became hiking buddies, book club members who shared my love for mystery novels, and fellow volunteers who understood the joy of mentoring. For the first time, I built relationships based on shared values, not obligation or proximity. As weeks became months, I began clearing out the last remnants of my old life. Every childhood memento required a choice. Did I keep it for myself or was I holding it out of duty? Photo albums, report cards, elementary school artwork. All were scrutinized. Some items were easy to toss, tied only to hard memories. Others brought genuine warmth, earning their place in my new life. The hardest were those with mixed feelings, like the hand-knit sweater Mom made for my college graduation. I kept it, accepting that complicated relationships could still hold real love. One significant step involved my childhood bedroom at my parents' house. Over the years, I had left bulky items and meaningful possessions there. With Dr. Foster's encouragement, I hired movers to bring the items to my apartment while my family was out, leaving a polite, firm note explaining why. The boxes arrived the next day. Sorting them became a therapeutic ritual. High school journals, awards, the worn stuffed bear that had witnessed my childhood tears and triumphs. All were pieces of my history that I reclaimed on my own terms. Through this process, I realized a crucial truth. The family I had sacrificed for existed more in my imagination than in reality. I had been loyal to an idea, a hope of what we could be, instead of seeing what we truly were. That truth hurt, but it freed me from impossible expectations, both of them and myself. As the 3-month mark of no contact approached, I felt unexpected readiness, not necessarily for reconciliation but for whatever came next. I had built a life that was truly mine, rooted in my choices and values rather than others' expectations. Boundaries were in place and I had the strength to maintain them. Whatever happened with my family, I would no longer lose myself in the process. The night before unblocking their numbers, I stood on my balcony, gazing at the Boston skyline. City lights shimmered across the harbor and I felt a deep peace, grateful for the painful awakening that led to real growth. Tomorrow I would face my family as the person I had become, not the one trained to serve their needs. Morning arrived heavy with anticipation. Dreams had been restless, filled with confrontation and reconciliation scenarios. Sitting on my bed, I took a deep breath and unblocked their numbers. Within seconds, notifications flooded in. 15 missed calls from the previous day. 5 from Mom, 4 from Dad, 3 from Heather, and 3 from Jeremy. My thumb hovered over the voicemail icon. Dr. Foster had prepared me. Boundaries were set, responses rehearsed. So my heart raced. I pressed play and put the phone on speaker. The first messages were accusatory, predictable. Mom's voice sharp, Dad's heavy with disappointment, Heather's laced with manipulation. Later, desperation replaced indignation. I recognized the emotional manipulation but also acknowledged the real crisis. A foreclosure looming. Instead of reacting impulsively, I called Dr. Foster. "What do you want to do, Elena?" she asked. "Not what you feel obligated to do, but what you actually want." "I care about their well-being," I said, "but I won't fall back into old patterns. They need accountability." She nodded. "That's a thoughtful boundary. Consider actions that respect both their needs and your limits." I contacted a financial advisor I had used before. We agreed a neutral meeting was best. Then I texted my parents. "I received your messages. I'm willing to meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Westbrook Financial Advisors. Please come prepared for an honest conversation." Their reply was immediate. "We'll be there." "Thank you, Elena." Even as the day approached, I felt calm. Boundaries, preparation, and self-respect had given me strength I never knew existed. When I arrived at Westbrook Financial Advisors, my family was already there. Mom looked smaller than I remembered, worry etched on her face. Dad slouched, shoulders heavy with tension. Heather fidgeted with her manicure and Jeremy scrolled on his phone, appearing detached. Mr. Westbrook, our neutral advisor, welcomed us and explained his role. He reviewed the finances clearly. The mortgage in pre-foreclosure, missed business loan payments, depleted retirement accounts, and credit card debt piling up. I watched their reactions closely. Mom quietly wept. Dad nodded grimly, Heather's indifference faded to concern, and Jeremy seemed calculating as though searching for an escape route. Once the numbers were clear, Mr. Westbrook turned to me. "Elena wants to address personal matters first," he said. All eyes shifted to me. I took a deep breath. "Before any financial help, we need to address what happened in the past. Heather committed fraud using my identity, and instead of taking accountability, blame was shifted to me. That broke trust. I'm willing to assist financially during this crisis, but only with clear conditions to prevent future harm." Dad leaned forward. "What conditions?" I explained carefully. "Mortgage payments must go directly to the bank. Heather and Jeremy would attend financial responsibility classes and create a repayment plan, and we would all attend family therapy together for at least 6 sessions. No blame or punishment, just acknowledgement and a commitment to healthier relationships." Silence filled the room. Mom finally whispered, "We don't deserve your help, but we're grateful." Mr. Westbrook guided them through the payment schedules and class registration. Jeremy participated minimally, offering only a nod here and there. I wondered if his relationship with Heather would last, but that was no longer my concern. As the meeting ended, hugs felt inappropriate. I offered a small smile. I'll be in touch about therapy appointments. Outside, Heather asked quietly, "Why are you still helping us?" I answered calmly, "Because letting you suffer won't heal the past. Enabling destructive behavior doesn't help either. I'm trying to find a middle path." Our first family therapy session was challenging but productive. Dr. Lydia Morgan, a skilled therapist, created a safe environment to untangle decades of dysfunction. Mom cried, Dad shared honestly, Heather showed brief remorse, and Jeremy eventually stopped attending. Heather later broke up with him, realizing some lessons must be learned independently. I supported them without overstepping. Progress came in small steps. Mom began checking in without demands, Dad praised achievements without comparison, and Heather made her first repayments on time. Boundaries were respected and accountability became a shared effort. 6 months later, we celebrated Mom's birthday at a restaurant. The evening was lighter, laughter came easily. Heather raised her glass. "To Elena," she said, "for teaching us that real love sometimes means saying no, and helping isn't the same as fixing. Healing is ongoing. Some days remain frustrating, others hopeful. Boundaries protect everyone from slipping back into codependency. I've learned that answering a call from family doesn't require abandoning myself. True connection demands boundaries as much as openness, accountability as much as forgiveness, and interdependence rather than codependence." Meanwhile, life beyond family obligations continued to thrive. Coding workshops remained central. Teaching and inspiring young girls became routine. My Japan trip, once delayed, fulfilled every expectation and offered more than scenery. It symbolized autonomy, discovery, and joy. I began planning my next adventure, an African safari, another dream delayed by decades of caretaking. Friendships deepened. Professional opportunities emerged, and even romantic possibilities began to feel accessible. For the first time, my life was fully mine, free from invisible chains of obligation. Therapy remained a cornerstone. Dr. Foster helped me navigate residual feelings of guilt and anxiety. We worked on strategies to maintain boundaries while still expressing love and support appropriately. Emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and compassion became tools, not weaknesses. I journaled daily, documenting moments of joy, personal victories, and emotional growth. Each entry reminded me that progress isn't linear but cumulative. The threads of past pain became woven into resilience, patience, and perspective. Volunteering offered profound satisfaction. Mentoring girls in coding taught me the impact of genuine encouragement. Watching them debug programs, overcome frustration, and celebrate accomplishments reminded me why I loved technology in the first place. Their victories weren't mine to fix, they were theirs to nurture. I also embraced small pleasures once postponed. Exploring Boston's cafes, attending museums, and small concerts. I reconnected with old friends and cultivated new ones. Relationships now built on shared interests, values, and respect, not obligation or inherited expectation. Therapy and volunteering synergized. The confidence I gained from personal accomplishments empowered me to mentor others authentically. Setting boundaries with my family allowed energy and attention to flow to endeavors I chose, not ones dictated by guilt. With each milestone, the weight of the past lifted. Childhood memories, once tinged with frustration or resentment, became stories of resilience rather than chains. Even moments of doubt served as reminders of progress and boundaries maintained. Financial independence further solidified my freedom. Retirement contributions increased, emergency funds were built, and identity protections were enforced. Decisions about my life, including property, investments, and career moves, were mine alone. Looking back, I realized that my family's dysfunction shaped but did not define me. The choice to step back, reclaim autonomy, and assert boundaries transformed my life from obligation-driven survival to purposeful living. The combination of therapy, financial awareness, volunteering, and personal exploration created a holistic approach to well-being. Emotional freedom, intellectual engagement, and practical independence formed a solid foundation for continued growth. Through all these experiences, I learned an essential truth. Love doesn't require surrendering oneself. Boundaries protect, accountability nurtures, and interdependence sustains meaningful relationships. Choosing when to step in or hold back isn't selfish, it's strategic self-care. Following the family meeting and the first therapy sessions, A sense of calm and control began to take hold. It wasn't immediate. It arrived gradually, like sunlight slipping between clouds. I noticed that I could make decisions for myself without that familiar guilt or worry about disappointing someone else. For the first time, my choices were about me. Volunteering continued to anchor my days. I expanded my coding workshops for girls from 12 to 20 participants, covering ages 12 to 17. Each student had her own challenges. Some lacked encouragement at home, others doubted their abilities, but each spark of curiosity was electric. Helping them debug code or grasp a new programming concept reminded me that I could teach without judgment, inspire without expectation, and guide without being responsible for their mistakes. One afternoon, I worked with a girl named Mia, 14, struggling to complete her first Python project. She stared at the screen, frustrated, tears threatening to fall. I knelt beside her, showing patience and gentle guidance. "Try breaking the problem into smaller pieces," I suggested. Slowly, her fingers moved across the keyboard, executing the code successfully. Her face lit up. "I did it," she exclaimed. I felt a surge of pride, not because she depended on me but because her own effort had triumphed. Outside the workshops, I began exploring Boston like never before. I visited hidden cafes, tucked away art galleries, and small jazz clubs that had existed under my nose for years. Every visit felt like reclaiming parts of a city I had avoided while trapped in family obligations. Museums became my escape, concerts my inspiration, and street festivals my reminder that life could be vibrant, unpredictable, and joyful. Friendships also flourished. Amanda remained my steadfast supporter, attending coding workshops and joining me for museum trips. Colleagues became hiking partners, book club members shared mysteries and thrillers over coffee, and fellow volunteers connected over the satisfaction of mentorship. These relationships were built on shared interests, mutual respect, and joy, not obligation or guilt. Financial independence continued to reinforce my newfound freedom. I reviewed my budget, strengthened emergency funds, and adjusted retirement contributions. With every financial decision, I felt more secure and in control. Elena Morgan, the responsible, independent, boundary-setting woman, was no longer just a concept. She was living, breathing, thriving. Therapy remained a cornerstone of my life. Dr. Foster encouraged me to explore long-held fears, understand emotional patterns, and develop strategies for maintaining boundaries. Sessions often left me drained emotionally, yet they provided clarity and strength. I began to recognize moments where old habits, like overextending to fix problems, surfaced, and I learned to pause, reflect, and choose a different response. One significant exercise involved writing letters I never intended to send. I wrote to my parents, Heather, and even Jeremy. I poured out frustrations, hurt, and unmet expectations, then folded the letters and placed them in a drawer. It was liberating. The act of expressing myself without needing validation or reconciliation felt revolutionary. My words existed for me, not them. The Japan trip loomed closer. Each evening, I researched ryokan stays, hidden neighborhoods in Tokyo, and traditional tea houses. I joined online language groups, practicing basic phrases, customs, and etiquette. Anticipating this long-postponed adventure became a source of joy and motivation, a tangible reward for years of patience and self-discipline. As I prepared for the trip, I also tackled remnants of my old life. Childhood mementos, old textbooks, and high school journals had been collected over the past 3 months. Each item forced a choice: keep it for genuine joy, donate it for someone else to benefit, or discard it entirely. Sorting through the past became a ritual of reflection, release, and reclamation. Some items were easy to discard: broken toys, outdated school projects, and letters tied only to negative memories. Others, like a hand-knit sweater from my college graduation or a photo of my little sister and me laughing, I kept. These objects reminded me that complicated love and relationships could coexist with personal boundaries and autonomy. Even my apartment reflected this transformation. I painted walls in colors I loved, displayed art that inspired me, and rearranged furniture to create a sense of flow and calm. The space became a sanctuary, a tangible representation of self-directed life. Meanwhile, professional life flourished. Free from family drama, my creativity soared. I proposed a new software feature at work, recognized by executives for innovation. My boss hinted at a director-level promotion within a year. Work no longer felt like a duty. It became a stage for personal expression, skill mastery, and collaborative success. This combination of personal, professional, and volunteer growth created balance. I realized that helping others, whether mentoring girls in coding or guiding peers at work, could be fulfilling without being draining. True giving felt different from family obligations. It was empowering, mutual, and respected boundaries. Through all these experiences, I discovered a profound truth. Life is not about fixing everyone else. It's about contributing where you can, setting boundaries where needed, and prioritizing growth, happiness, and self-respect. The lessons I learned over months of therapy, volunteering, and exploration became tools for lifelong resilience. The balance of love and boundaries began to show in interactions with my family as well. Heather's repayments continued, Mom's casual check-ins respected my space, and Dad's praise came without comparison. Even small victories felt monumental, a testament to patience, persistence, and a commitment to change. By the end of this phase, I realized that I had rebuilt a life rooted in choice, not obligation. Every adventure, friendship, and professional success reinforced the idea that boundaries were not walls. They were protections that enabled freedom. My narrative was no longer dictated by past expectations or family dynamics. It belonged to me. As the months progressed, I found that self-reflection had become a daily practice. Mornings were for journaling, sometimes just a sentence, other times pages of thought about boundaries, feelings, and achievements. I tracked patterns. Moments when I felt compelled to help unnecessarily, times when guilt crept in, and occasions when I truly acted from choice, not obligation. The contrast between obligation-driven life and choice-driven life was stark. When my parents or Heather called, I no longer reacted instantly. I paused, evaluated, and chose whether to respond, how, and with what tone. Freedom from immediate reaction became liberating, reinforcing the importance of emotional self-regulation. Amanda remained a cornerstone of support. Weekly dinners became our ritual, a space to discuss work, personal growth, and challenges. "You've transformed, Elena," she said one evening. "I've seen you go from someone constantly carrying others' burdens to someone guiding without guilt. It's inspiring." Her words validated the slow, painstaking work I had done, reclaiming myself without resentment. At work, I felt confidence surging. Leading projects felt less like a responsibility and more like a creative expression. Colleagues began turning to me for mentorship, not because they expected perfection but because they trusted my insight. I could help without absorbing their stress, a delicate but empowering balance. Meanwhile, I continued my Japan planning. Booking accommodations, creating itineraries, and exploring cultural nuances became more than logistical tasks. They symbolized my autonomy. Every step reinforced the fact that I was finally living for myself, honoring delayed dreams, and reclaiming time lost to family obligations. During one therapy session, Dr. Foster asked, "Are you ready to engage with your family on your terms?" I considered carefully. "Yes," I said, "but only after establishing clear boundaries and ensuring accountability. I cannot undo progress by succumbing to old patterns." We role-played family interactions, anticipating manipulation, guilt-tripping, or passive-aggressiveness. I practiced responses, keeping tone calm, assertive, and non-emotional when necessary. Dr. Foster reminded me, "Reconnection isn't surrender. It's a dialogue under your rules." The sessions gave me clarity and courage. I also revisited my apartment, reviewing items brought from my childhood home. Some still evoked mixed emotions. Letters from Heather, gifts from Mom, and photographs capturing moments both joyful and painful. I made decisions. Keep what represented authentic connection or growth, donate what no longer served me, and discard what represented guilt or manipulation. Volunteer work continued to flourish. The coding workshops grew, and I organized additional mentoring sessions for older teens exploring tech careers. I noticed a recurring theme. The girls who struggled at home thrived when given autonomy and guidance, much like I had when I finally embraced my independence. This realization reinforced the idea that empowerment is distinct from obligation, supporting growth without absorbing responsibility. In personal reflection, I acknowledged lingering emotions. Love for my family hadn't vanished, but it had transformed. Compassion replaced obligation. Care remained, but it was now bounded, intentional, and protective of my emotional health. I could act without sacrificing well-being, which was revolutionary compared to decades of self-effacement. The night before I planned to re-establish limited contact with my family, I stood on my balcony overlooking Boston. Lights reflected in the harbor and the city hummed with life. I breathed deeply, appreciating the journey, from constant caretaker to self-directed adult. This pause allowed me to internalize lessons learned and mentally prepare for difficult conversations. The next morning, I unblocked their numbers, careful and deliberate. 15 missed calls awaited. 5 from Mom, 4 from Dad, 3 from Heather, and 3 from Jeremy. My thumb hovered over the voicemail icon. I had rehearsed my responses, grounded in boundaries and fairness. First, I listened without reacting. Accusations poured in as expected. Mom's voice trembled with tension. "Elena, this silence is unacceptable. You must call back immediately to discuss the finances." Dad followed, urging reconciliation. "Your mother is upset and you've overreacted. Please explain yourself and consider the family's perspective." Heather's messages carried manipulation and passive aggressiveness. "You always think you're right, Elena. You're making mountains out of molehills. Don't overreact again." Jeremy's messages were indifferent but pointed. "Need to talk about payments. Hurry up." I resisted old habits of immediate rescue or apology. Instead, I prepared a structured plan with Dr. Foster and my financial advisor. Accountability would be mutual, with defined boundaries protecting my emotional and financial stability. Later, I scheduled a meeting with all parties at a neutral location, Westbrook Financial Advisors. The intent was clear: address urgent matters while safeguarding my autonomy. I sent a calm, firm message. "I've received your messages. Let's meet tomorrow at 2 p.m. at Westbrook Financial Advisors to discuss the situation. Please come prepared for honesty and accountability." Their prompt response: "We'll be there. Thank you, Elena." I spent the evening reviewing finances, therapy notes, and boundaries. Preparing mentally, emotionally, and practically reinforced my confidence. This wasn't surrender. It was structured, mindful engagement on my terms. The following day, arriving at the advisor's office, I found my family waiting. Mom looked anxious. Dad slumped slightly, Heather fiddled with her phone, and Jeremy seemed nonchalant. Mr. Westbrook, the financial mediator, outlined the pre-foreclosure mortgage, unpaid credit cards, and strained business loans. Reactions varied. Mom cried, Dad nodded solemnly, Heather seemed mildly surprised, and Jeremy remained detached. When it came time to discuss personal accountability, I spoke with clarity. Before any financial assistance, we address past issues. Heather's identity theft and the prior financial missteps affected all of us. Assistance will proceed only with boundaries, repayment plans, and family therapy. This is not punishment. It's structured to prevent repeating harmful patterns. Mom asked gently, "What are the specific conditions?" I outlined: direct mortgage payments, mandatory financial literacy for Heather and Jeremy, repayment schedules, and 6 joint therapy sessions. Mr. Westbrook facilitated logistics. Heather and Jeremy complied reluctantly. By the end, interactions were calm, structured, and guided by fairness rather than obligation. Hugs were minimal, yet the sense of respect and accountability was tangible. Outside the office, Heather asked quietly, "Why are you still helping us?" I answered firmly, "Because enabling destructive behavior doesn't heal the past. Helping responsibly with boundaries does." The first family therapy session felt tense, almost like stepping into a storm. Dr. Lydia Morgan, a seasoned family therapist, created a space where honesty was mandatory but judgment was suspended. Mom's eyes were red from crying. Dad's posture was rigid. Heather fidgeted with her phone and Jeremy leaned back, indifferent. I felt the familiar tug of old guilt, but this time I anchored in boundaries. Dr. Morgan began by establishing ground rules. Everyone spoke one at a time, listened without interruption, and acknowledged feelings without assigning blame. The structure was firm but fair. I felt my chest unclench as rules replaced chaos. Mom opened with vulnerability. "I didn't realize how much pressure we put on you, Elena. I'm sorry for letting Heather's actions overshadow your feelings." Dad followed, quieter but sincere. "I see now that I often let things slide with Heather while expecting you to manage. That wasn't fair." Heather's voice wavered, finally showing remorse. "I know I made things difficult. I didn't mean to hurt you, Elena. I didn't know how to act differently." Jeremy remained nonchalant, but his presence was part of the therapy boundary. He had to acknowledge accountability, however limited. For me, the session was both validation and revelation. Years of emotional labor were finally acknowledged. The therapist helped translate vague apologies into concrete commitments. I realized that healthy relationships weren't about erasing mistakes. They were about recognition, restitution, and shared responsibility. Over the next weeks, we held bi-weekly sessions. Each brought progress, though not perfectly linear. Mom started checking in on me with genuine interest rather than only during crises. Dad offered praise without comparing Heather's failures to my successes. Heather began making her repayments consistently, and Jeremy's involvement dwindled, eventually ending as he and Heather separated. Therapy emphasized accountability over blame. I was learning that my role had shifted, from enabler to guide, from caretaker to advocate for fairness. I listened, I advised when asked, but I no longer absorbed their stress or guilt. Boundaries weren't walls. They were protective frameworks that allowed connection without self-sacrifice. In my own life, I continued to explore new avenues of joy. Volunteer coding workshops expanded to include weekend hackathons for teens, mentorship programs, and community tech talks. Watching young girls code their first apps, debug challenges, and gain confidence was profoundly fulfilling. Unlike family obligations, this work was reciprocal and affirming. Meanwhile, my Japan trip loomed closer. I spent hours learning the language, exploring neighborhoods, and planning cultural immersion. Every step symbolized autonomy and delayed dreams now realized. Planning felt like therapy in itself, a celebration of self-determination. I also focused on friendships. Amanda remained a constant, but I broadened my circle. Book clubs introduced me to fellow mystery enthusiasts. Hiking groups brought people who valued exploration and resilience, and volunteering connected me with peers passionate about mentorship. Relationships based on shared values, not obligation, felt novel and deeply rewarding. Professionally, I thrived. With emotional bandwidth restored, my creativity flourished. I pitched innovative tech solutions that were embraced by leadership. Mentorship became a natural extension of my role, not a burden but a choice. The satisfaction of seeing colleagues grow under guidance, without emotional entanglement, mirrored the success I found in volunteer mentoring. Throughout all this, therapy remained a backbone. Dr. Foster helped me navigate residual guilt, refine boundaries, and stay mindful of progress. We revisited past interactions with my family, exploring emotional triggers and strategies for maintaining detachment from manipulative patterns. I journaled reflections after each session, charting growth and reinforcing autonomy. One particularly powerful session focused on forgiveness. Dr. Foster asked, "Can you separate love from enabling?" I paused, then realized, yes. I could love my family, care about their well-being, without letting them control my emotions or obligations. This revelation was liberating. Returning home, I implemented practical changes. Financial boundaries were formalized, emergency funds increased, retirement contributions optimized, and legal protections reinforced. My apartment, once a simple refuge, became a curated sanctuary reflecting personal taste, accomplishments, and self-respect. Interactions with family became predictable and structured. Phone calls were scheduled with agendas and limits. Emails regarding finances were factual, concise, and monitored through secure systems. Emotional manipulation no longer dictated my responses. I felt empowered. Compassion and control could coexist. Heather began small gestures of accountability, sending text updates on repayments, acknowledging past harm, and seeking advice rather than demands. Mom and Dad adjusted gradually, learning to respect boundaries while still connecting. The shifts were subtle but tangible. Meanwhile, my independent life thrived. Weekend trips, workshops, cultural events, and friendships filled my calendar. The balance of work, passion projects, and personal growth cultivated a sense of wholeness. I no longer existed solely as a problem solver for others. I existed as Elena, autonomous, accomplished, and joyful. By the 6th month, family meetings focused less on crisis management and more on dialogue and growth. Each session reinforced mutual respect and accountability. The dynamic that had once defined me as the perpetual scapegoat shifted to a relationship rooted in understanding, not obligation. The lessons learned were clear. Boundaries create freedom, accountability fosters connection, and self-respect strengthens relationships. My growth was not linear, but every step was deliberate and rooted in conscious choice. The scars of past burdens remained, but they were reframed as markers of resilience rather than anchors of guilt. As the sun set one evening, I reflected on the journey, from countless calls, overbearing responsibilities, and suppressed dreams, to empowerment, clarity, and self-determined growth. I could finally breathe, knowing that helping, caring, and loving could exist on my terms. With family therapy sessions becoming routine, I discovered the value of emotional space. Mornings were reserved for journaling, meditation, and goal setting. Afternoons focused on professional growth, volunteer projects, or exploring Boston. Evenings were for self-care and connecting with friends who had become a supportive community. This structure was intentional, a deliberate step to prioritize my life over reactive caregiving. The volunteer coding workshops expanded further. I partnered with local schools, offering after-school programming clubs. Teenagers who had never imagined themselves as tech creators now developed apps, games, and websites under my guidance. Watching them grapple with challenges and persevere ignited a passion I hadn't realized lay dormant. Unlike family obligations, these efforts were rooted in mutual growth, not guilt. I found joy in impact, not obligation. As I planned my Japan trip, I also explored domestic adventures. Weekend getaways became rituals: hikes in New Hampshire, overnight trips to Cape Cod, and visits to art exhibits or live concerts. Each experience reinforced independence and creativity. These weren't escapes, they were affirmations of a life I chose intentionally. Work became a playground for innovation. I proposed and led a mentorship program for junior coders, which was met with enthusiasm. Guiding emerging talent reminded me of my own journey, the support I wished I had during formative years, and the importance of creating structures that foster growth rather than dependence. This echoed the volunteer workshops, blending personal fulfillment with professional achievement. Meanwhile, family communication was still delicate. Calls and messages were now structured, concise, and purposeful. Heather occasionally reached out seeking guidance, but the difference was striking. I responded from a place of mentorship, not obligation. Mom and Dad called less frequently with crises, choosing to update me rather than demand instant solutions. I felt proud of this shift. Boundaries were transforming interactions from chaos to collaboration. A turning point came when Heather acknowledged past manipulations. "Elena, I see how much I put on you and I want to make it right. Can we start fresh?" It wasn't perfect, and I knew her history of deflection. Yet it felt genuine. I accepted her words with cautious optimism, reinforcing that trust is earned, not assumed. Financial independence also became central. I revisited budgets, investments, and long-term plans. Emergency funds increased, retirement contributions were optimized, and legal protections were in place. I wasn't withholding help out of spite. I was protecting myself while ensuring any assistance was structured, accountable, and sustainable. This approach allowed compassion without self-sacrifice. My apartment continued evolving into a sanctuary. Walls displayed artwork, photographs from solo adventures, and mementos of volunteer projects. Each item symbolized choice, joy, and self-expression rather than duty or expectation. It was a physical reflection of mental freedom, a tangible reminder of autonomy and accomplishment. Friendships deepened. Amanda remained a constant, but new connections flourished through volunteer work, professional networks, and hobbies. Shared interests formed the foundation: mystery book clubs, hiking excursions, and coding meetups. Relationships were now mutual, empowering, and energizing, a stark contrast to the imbalance of my family interactions. Therapy remained an anchor. Dr. Foster emphasized consistent reflection, assessing triggers, reviewing boundaries, and celebrating growth. Sessions explored emotional reactions to family updates, internalized guilt, and lingering resentment. Journaling between sessions became a tool for clarity, allowing me to navigate complex feelings while reinforcing agency over my choices. The Japan trip approached with anticipation rather than anxiety. I researched every detail, from local food experiences to historical sites and cultural etiquette. Preparing independently gave me confidence. Every step reinforced autonomy and capability. I wasn't fleeing family obligations, I was embracing life on my own terms. Professional growth continued. I led a cross-departmental project that became a company highlight, showcasing both leadership and technical expertise. Recognition came not just from results, but from mentoring others and fostering collaborative success. The satisfaction of seeing both colleagues and teenagers thrive under guidance mirrored a deeper truth. Impact doesn't require sacrificing self-worth. Reflection became a daily habit. I considered past patterns of enabling, the guilt imposed by parental expectations, and Heather's repeated manipulation. Understanding these dynamics didn't erase pain, but it reframed it. I could separate past responsibility from present choice. Love existed without obligation, care without compulsion, and connection without codependency. By the end of this period, independence was tangible. I could navigate crises calmly, volunteer without burnout, travel alone, mentor with purpose, and maintain professional excellence. The transformation wasn't instantaneous. It was the result of conscious effort, therapy, and self-respect. I was becoming the Elena I had longed to be, autonomous, confident, and joyful. Family dynamics, though still evolving, had shifted. Mom and Dad respected my boundaries, Heather demonstrated accountability, and Jeremy's absence reduced chaos. The focus was now on mutual growth, transparency, and communication, not control or blame. This was a new normal, balanced and healthier. The journey reinforced a fundamental truth. Caring for others begins with caring for oneself. Boundaries aren't rejection, they are preservation. Autonomy doesn't diminish love, it amplifies it. And healing doesn't erase history, it transforms its lessons into a roadmap for resilience, compassion, and intentional living. The final phase of my journey focused on integrating all I had learned, boundaries, independence, and meaningful connections, into everyday life. I realized that true freedom wasn't just physical or financial, it was emotional and mental. I could love my family without being trapped by their expectations. I could mentor, travel, and create without guilt or obligation. I could define my own success. Returning from Japan, I felt a renewed sense of clarity. The trip had been transformative. Walking through ancient temples, wandering bustling city streets, and savoring local cuisine on my own terms reinforced independence. Each day had been a conscious choice, an affirmation that my happiness wasn't contingent on anyone else. I had planned the trip, navigated unfamiliar terrain, and immersed myself in a new culture, all without seeking validation. Back in Boston, I continued volunteering with renewed passion. My coding workshops grew into a small nonprofit initiative, offering scholarships, mentorship, and resources for underprivileged youth. Watching teenagers, especially girls, gain confidence and see possibilities beyond their immediate environment reminded me of why I had chosen this path. My impact was real, tangible, and fulfilling. Family interactions remained cautious but positive. Heather's progress was steady. She met repayment goals, attended financial responsibility classes, and began therapy sessions. Mom and Dad learned to respect boundaries, offering updates without pressuring or blaming. Their tone shifted from expectation to genuine concern, and I responded with compassion without compromising my autonomy. A defining moment came when my parents invited me to dinner, not for requests or complaints but simply to share a meal. I accepted, noticing how different it felt, relaxed, respectful, and free from guilt. Heather joined, and though old habits lingered in subtle ways, the atmosphere was markedly lighter. We shared laughs, stories, and small victories. It wasn't perfect, but it was authentic. Professional life continued to flourish. I led a high-profile tech initiative, earning recognition from executives and peers alike. Mentorship programs expanded under my guidance. For the first time, I felt that my career, volunteer work, and personal life were aligned. I could thrive professionally without being tethered to family crises, a balance that had seemed impossible years ago. Friendships deepened. Amanda remained a trusted confidant, but new connections became equally meaningful. Hiking trips, book clubs, coding meetups, and cultural events created a network of support and joy. These relationships were reciprocal, built on shared interests and respect. No one demanded my energy as a debt. My contributions were appreciated because they were genuine, not obligatory. I also embraced self-care routines that I had neglected for years. Early mornings included journaling and meditation, afternoons for creative projects or volunteering, and evenings for rest, reflection, or social connection. I learned to recognize emotional triggers, address stress proactively, and celebrate progress rather than dwell on past guilt. These habits became pillars of resilience. Legal and financial protections were in place. I had secured emergency funds, optimized retirement accounts, and formalized any family support agreements with clear terms. This structured approach allowed me to help my family responsibly without compromising my well-being. Compassion coexisted with boundaries, a balance that was empowering rather than burdensome. Romantic possibilities emerged cautiously. Freed from old patterns of guilt and obligation, I could engage authentically. Connections felt mutual, grounded in shared values and devoid of pressure. This aspect of life, once overshadowed by family responsibilities, became another avenue for joy and growth. The Japan trip remained a symbolic milestone, representing a turning point where choice and independence replaced duty and guilt. Planning the next adventure, an African safari, filled me with excitement rather than anxiety. I was finally living on my own terms, embracing experiences, people, and challenges for the sake of fulfillment, not obligation. Reflecting on the journey, I acknowledged the complexities of love, family, and personal growth. My parents and sister were imperfect, and so was I. But I learned that love doesn't require self-sacrifice, and family doesn't demand total submission. Respect, accountability, and boundaries were the foundation of healthy relationships. I could still care deeply while preserving my identity and autonomy. Therapy remained central. Dr. Foster emphasized continuous reflection, identifying triggers, reassessing boundaries, and celebrating milestones. I journaled regularly, noting successes, challenges, and emotional insights. This practice reinforced self-awareness and allowed me to navigate family interactions without falling back into old patterns. As months passed, the family dynamic settled into a healthier rhythm. Heather maintained responsibility, Mom and Dad respected limits, and communication focused on updates rather than demands. Family gatherings became enjoyable, not anxiety-inducing. I contributed but no longer carried the weight of fixing their problems. The distinction between care and obligation was now clear. Volunteering became a lifelong mission. Coding workshops expanded to include mentorship, scholarships, and community engagement. Teenagers, especially young girls, thrived under guidance. Their achievements were celebrations of potential, not comparisons to my sacrifices. This work gave purpose, joy, and fulfillment far beyond familial expectations. Looking forward, my focus remained on balance, professional excellence, personal growth, volunteer engagement, meaningful relationships, and continuous learning. I had cultivated resilience, independence, and a sense of purpose that could weather future challenges. Life was no longer dictated by duty or manipulation. It was directed by intention, choice, and self-respect. Healing, I realized, is ongoing. Boundaries aren't fixed. They evolve as relationships change. Love isn't static. It requires care without compromise. Success isn't defined by others' approval. It's measured by fulfillment and growth. This framework allowed me to approach life with confidence, compassion, and clarity. The most important lesson: stepping away doesn't mean abandoning love. It means redefining it on terms that honor both self and others. By choosing boundaries, pursuing passions, and nurturing authentic connections, I transformed years of obligation and guilt into a life rich with independence, joy, and impact. Now, when I think of Heather, Mom, and Dad, it's with empathy tempered by wisdom. I remain connected, supportive, and present, but no longer controlled by old dynamics. Freedom comes not from distance alone, but from clarity, choice, and self-respect. And with each new day, I continue to live intentionally, grateful for the journey, proud of the boundaries I've set, and excited for the future I am building on my own terms.